Hi, everybody, and welcome to the summer session of What is America, um, a futurism class. Um, this is effectively the same class that you would get if you were taking during spring or fall semester Intro to American Studies. The only difference is that it's 6 weeks long and asynchronous, so you're going to have to bear with me as I awkwardly talk into my computer um, for you instead of us having an in-person conversation. I'm more of a conversational instructor in general, so this is a bit of a new format, but we're gonna do our best, and I'm sure it'll go okay. Um, that said, my favorite part of teaching is getting to know the students. So please like email me if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to come to office hours, come to office hours. Um, my office hours are posted on our Canvas page, but essentially they are also flexible in that, like, if you email me and you say, hey, I can't make your normal office hours drop-in time, can I meet? The answer is yes, absolutely. Just email me and we'll figure out a time that works for you. Because my whole job this summer is writing and researching and teaching this class, my schedule is incredibly flexible, so I can meet on Zoom at your convenience, more or less. And yeah, so don't be a stranger, please email me. And I think that's everything I need to get off the um, off at the very beginning before we can get into the slideshow. Oh, there's one other thing, which is I have a dog. Because we're doing this asynchronously, um, you're getting me recording in my apartment. So you are going to be hearing from this guy in the corner. His name is Rocky, and he can be a little bit loud because he's half husky. So I'll do my best to keep recording to times when he has not noticed a deer outside, which is why all the curtains are drawn. But if he sees a deer or a chipmunk outside, he might scream. Um, we'll work around it. Anyway, just if you hear weird noises, it's probably my dog because he's half husky. Um, okay, now we can get into it. Okay, so basic course intro, asynchronous class. Class is going to be 6 weeks, going from the um, Monday the 21st. I think it's the 21st, not the 22nd. No, I lied. It's the 22nd. Monday the 22nd of June, up until the last day of July, July 31st. So 6 week class. Um, because of that, we're working at a bit of an accelerated pace. So there is going to be a bit more reading than you would normally expect from an Intro to American Studies class. But I've tried to make it either not too overwhelming and also like not very theory heavy so that the reading goes by quickly because it's mostly literature, like fiction literature, not like, oh, we're gonna read a bunch of dense academic writing. We'll read a little bit of dense academic writing, but it's mostly literature. And it's a futurism class, so we're going to be reading a lot of sci-fi and speculative fiction. So if that's something you're into, you're in the right place. And if not, um, I hope this is at least enjoyable for you and interesting. So yeah, my drop-in office hours are going to be Wednesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. And so I will post the Zoom link in a Canvas announcement. It's not on the syllabus page because those are publicly available to people who don't go to IU due to a new state law. So I didn't want to post the Zoom link publicly because that's the guidance we got from the school. So you'll be able to find my Zoom information in an announcement on our Canvas page. You can also just email. I'm also available by appointment, as I said, and everything is going to be on Canvas. So these lecture videos will be on Canvas under Files. All of the readings will be under Canvas under Files. The lecture slides will be available for you to like click through at your leisure. Also under Files, and um, there's one source, I believe, that's a documentary. It's not that long, don't worry, it's only an hour. And that's available via a link in the syllabus because I don't know how to upload that to Canvas without, like, it's freely available online, but I felt weird about pirating, like, downloading it would have been pirated. Anyway, so that's available via a link. but it's free, so it should be very easy to just effectively like watching a YouTube video just on a different website. Okay, class policies. Uh, Number one, don't use AI. I know different classes have different policies on this matter, but this one in particular is a class about imagination more than anything, right? America is a futurist project for reasons that we will get into. That's the entire thesis of this 6-week course, is that you can learn a lot about America by thinking about its relationship to the future. But a big part of that is imagination. Um, what do we want? What do we dream of when we dream of a future? How is America built on people dreaming of better and better worlds, or different and newer worlds? So, oh, Rocky, don't knock things over. Um, Sorry, he's eating something under the desk. Please don't eat the power cords. Um, right. So this class is all about imagination. How do we imagine futures that are better than the one we're living? So I actually really, really want you to practice thinking about and imagining future worlds. Um, so the class is intended for you to have space to work through that kind of thought process. And also, if you want to critique authors or think critically about what you're reading, um, the way you practice that is by doing it. I'm not going to be grading you on like grammar or spelling or anything like that. I really want you to sit with and work through your own critical thoughts and your own ideas. Um, that is going to be 100% more interesting to read. It's going to be 100% more thought provoking for me as a reading your work, and for you writing it, than just plugging and copying and pasting prompt from like a language learning model. So these all kind of go together. Don't use AI to do your writing for you. It's also not going to write something very good. Like, it'll be technically proficient enough in terms of like grammar and spelling, but it will be deeply boring and not really have a point. Um, so you'll get a better grade for your own work than you would for AI. So please do your own work. Thank you so much. Um, Cite your sources. That's really important. I'm not going to be a stickler for like, did you follow a specific citational format exactly or anything. Everyone makes mistakes on that. The rules change all the time. I just want you to get in the habit of attributing ideas to where you got them, unless you came up with them yourself, in which case attribute them to yourself, because that's cool. And then think critically. Every text we read, whether it's literature or theory, like everything, even like Harry Potter is making an argument, Lord of the Rings is making an argument, everything is making an argument, even if it is fiction. So we're here to understand and analyze those arguments. Those are not texts we're reading, they're just examples. So yeah, please lean into agreeing with or disagreeing with whatever you read. You're probably going to disagree with a lot of the texts. You're probably going to agree with a lot of the texts. It's entirely up to you what you make of them. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the weekly writing responses. So yeah, each week, this is vaguely our schedule. We're going to have 2 recorded lectures. One is going to be more focused on Parable of the Sower, which is the big text we're reading. We're reading that whole book. Don't panic, it's a novel and it's very engagingly written. It's a fast read. And then one is primarily going to be focused on providing broader context and some of the other supplementary readings that are assigned. Then you'll have a few readings. Each week, you're going to be responsible for about 5 chapters of Parable of the Sower up until we run out of chapters, which will be week 5. That's when we'll finish that book. And then a couple of other readings. Typically, these might be a long-ish work of, not long, like a relatively longer for these supplementary readings piece of short fiction, or a couple pages of theory. And then like maybe 1 or 2 very short read articles. So it's going to be a mix of like short stories, news articles, that you might read in like a tech journal or a news website, or sometimes like a piece of political theory. And then we'll look at a lot of primary sources. So you'll be reading transcripts of some famous speeches that deal with ideas of the future that are in conflict with each other sometimes, and that are maybe not as in conflict with each other as we think they are. So yeah, you'll be reading a couple of famous speeches and some famous historical pamphlets as well. And then there will be one short writing assignment. There will also be, yeah, one short writing assignment each week. So that I very much mean short, like 250 words, which is a couple sentences to a short paragraph. Every week you're going to go on Canvas, you're going to find the reading response assignment for that week and write like 250 words. I'm not grading for content. I'm not grading for like the writing quality technically. I'm not grading for spelling or things like that. I'm grading for, did you do it? Did you critically engage with at least one of the readings for the week? You can pick which reading speaks to you. It can be Parable of the Sower, it can be one of the supplementary readings. And you just write a little bit about what this week's reading made you think about the future, about the past, about America. Um, Maybe it spoke to you on a personal or human level. Maybe you really, really hate and disagree with a particular argument. Um, Whatever you want, these are supposed to be spaces for you to kind of run with your own ideas. So those are their weekly reading responses. There's one a week, so there'll be six. And then there's one other assignment. It's a paper, 3 pages, double spaced. Um, you can go up. You can write a little bit more than that. I'd rather you not write a little less than that. So like 3 pages minimum. 750 to 1,000 words is a good range. I'm not going to be counting strictly. It's a little bit like shorter. If it's like a line or two shorter, I'm not going to notice. But if you turn in like 2.5 pages, I'm going to be like, this is not enough, because this paper really needs to have at least a little bit of breathing room for you to explain whatever you're working with. So this paper can build off of ideas you explore in your weekly reading responses. It can also be entirely a new separate thing. There's going to be a draft due halfway through the class, so week 4. All this is explained in the syllabus, but basically this paper is going to be fun, I hope, because I want it to be a place for you to actually like synthesize something based on what you've been thinking about over the last 6 weeks, right? 6 weeks is a very short period of time. It's not long enough to like really develop a term paper or anything like that. And I don't want to make you try to do that. I know you all have like jobs and lives. What I do want you to do is have a little bit of space to play with your own ideas about the future for the country, for the people who live there, for the world. So this paper can be whatever you want it to be. It can be a creative writing project. You can write a short story about futurism if you want to. You can also write something more argumentative if you want to. Um, and all that I ask is that you engage with at least 2 sources from the class, meaningfully. I'm not talking just shoehorning a reference in, but like somewhat meaningfully. And that you write about the future in America in some capacity. But again, argumentative, experimental, um, creative, whatever you want. And if you have some other idea that you want to like check with me about, because I know this is very open ended, email me. I'm happy to talk it through with you, and I'm really excited to see what you come up with, and have fun with it more than anything. All right, now I can get into content because we did the sort of like general course stuff. Oh yeah, policies. Most of IU's academic policies don't really apply because we're not meeting in a classroom at a set time. Um, That said, some do still apply. So, late work. I will accept late work. Just email me and let me know that you're going to turn it in. If you miss a Canvas deadline, don't panic. You can email it to me if you have an explanation that can be as simple as I was sick, or I got scheduled for an extra shift at work and didn't have time. I will understand. You will not get points off. Just email me and let me know what happened and turn it in. So that's my late work policy. Um, Accessibility. If you need an alternative version of any of the course materials, if you want me to provide visual descriptions of any media, if you need like something that's screen reader accessible, or if you need extra time to complete assignments, just email me. Let me know what your accommodations are. I don't care if they are formally approved by IU or not. You don't have to provide me any of those like memos or anything. They're helpful if you have them. So if you have them, send them to me. But if you don't have any of that and you need something to be able to participate in this class, like just let me know. I will more than happy to make it work for you in whatever way we can. So yeah, just email me. And then academic integrity always is important. So yeah, cite your sources, don't plagiarize. You know the drill. Okay, now we can get into content. So a quick intro to futurism. Futurism sounds like, one of those isms in academia. It's a fancy word, but it really just means thinking about the future and its possibilities and how ideas about the future shape our present. Um, right? So, a lot of the way we live is influenced by our hopes and dreams for the future. Um, this can be as simplistic as you working out to protect your future health, or in the hopes that your body has bigger muscles for, I don't know, some future thing. That's a silly example. I use a lot of silly examples because they're not as political and not as heavy as like some of the things we're going to talk about in this class are pretty heavy, pretty significant, politically weighty and emotionally weighty material. And so sometimes silly examples can be like a helpful reframing and stepping back. So yeah, futurism just means we're thinking about the future, what it means to us. Um, in America, like the US, North America, when we talk about futurism, unless we're appending some additional adjective to the beginning of that, we're usually thinking about a very Western idea of what the future is and what time is. This is not the only way of thinking about the future, and a lot of our readings will address that. So there are other futurisms. We usually give them like longer, more specific names, which kind of maintains this like Western sense of futurism as the default, which is, that's something that we can talk about that's a bit problematic because it's not the default, it's one of many. Um, so there are other futurisms, Afrofuturism, indigenous futurisms. There are as many different ideas about futurity and time as there are ways of thinking about the world. But given that we are talking about like futurism in the US, we are talking primarily about Western futurism, and how other modes of futurism sort of critique it, because that is not the only futurism present in the US. Again, indigenous futurism from America is very much situated in America. But when we talk about like US culture, like the dominant voice is Western futurism. So this is like the idea of time that you think about when you think about like, oh, it is 2 p.m. It is time for me to walk my dog. Not yet actually, sorry, bud. Um, it's linear, it has a start point, an end point, and it's usually kind of something that we think about in terms of progress narratives, which is like improvement over time. Um, a story that has a linear arc, right? Beginning, middle, end. Beginning, some kind of crisis, um, some kind of denouement. Um, and progress narrative has this like hierarchical, almost moralizing sense that it can um, take on at some points, right? Because like beginning, middle, and end doesn't necessarily imply that the end is better off than the beginning, but most stories that we're telling, that is the trajectory of improvement over time. You practice riding a bike, you get better at riding a bike, you win a big race, something like that. This can and often is applied outside the scope of an individual story, though. So, if we think about the arc of history, we often talk about it as progress, right? We progress from more quote unquote primitive ideas to more and more civilized quote unquote ideas. The Industrial Revolution, technological progress, the space age, the age of AI, this idea that things are getting better over time. This, there are other senses of time, though, which we that are there, the details of which are outside the scope of our 6 weeks class, and it's very compressed schedule, unfortunately. But one alternative modality of considering time is circular time or cyclical time. So life cycles, repeated epochs and eras, time situated within a particular place and perspective, ecologically, astronomically, right? Like judging time by the fullness of the moon, thinking about time as being this cycle from new moon to full moon, back to new moon, back to full moon, back to new. It's not progressing towards or away from anything. It's not, it doesn't lend itself to that hierarchical way of thinking of this, then this, then this, then this, building up to this better version. Um, it's more about cycles, life cycles, harvest cycles. So yeah, there are other modes of thinking of time. Um, just sort of like a palette, not a palette cleanser, palette setter, an appetizer. We're going through the basics of how we typically think of futurism when we're talking about like culture, media, our lives, and politics, because all of those are interconnected, and futurism is a big kind of key element of considering how those interrelate, right? Because our politics and our situation historically, contemporarily, shape our media, which in turn informs how we think about those situations, which in turn informs how we act, politically, what we do with our lives, which in turn informs our media. It's a cycle, right? Because we can't escape culture and media. So we're going to talk about futurism in culture and media, in our personal lives, in our societal life, in politics, and so on. Um, these are just some examples that are variously popular, to show that there's a wide range of ways in which futurism um, shapes our media. So a lot of dystopian and utopian texts have futuristic angles to them. Sci-fi, obviously, space travel and time travel and advanced technologies. These are all elements of futurism that we typically see in culture and media. Um, we also have futurist aesthetics in our day-to-day lives, as well as sort of talked about in the news. So here we've got a range of things. You'll see Cybertrucks driving around. They look like a spaceship. Whether or not you think that's a good thing is not relevant. They're still futurist. Tally, the annoying robot you may have seen around Kroger, I find her annoying because so many people I know are employed at that Kroger. Fun fact, she's only being trialed in Indiana for now. So lucky us. Maybe Ohio too. They're trialing these around the headquarters of Kroger. Um, yeah, that's a futurist thing, right? I mean, 6 months ago there weren't any robots in the Kroger, and now there are. Here, some of these architectural pictures I got from an article on like 2026's most looked forward to architectural projects of the future. This is a metro station in Australia and an art museum in Los Angeles designed by George Lucas, or funded by George Lucas. And so it's got a very featurey design. And then here we've got like a fancy phone. Um, a lot of these are heavily influenced by various 20th century art and architecture movements, including, but not limited to, three big European ones: Italian Futurism, Bauhaus, and Brutalism. We're going to go a bit over those because the political basis of them is very relevant, like why futurism is a useful tool for thinking about a political, social, and cultural history of a region. Um, these are not the only futurist aesthetic influences that we see today, though. So this other image is a great example of that. This is the Canadian Space Agency patch for astronaut Hansen, who was on Artemis 2. That was the most recent moon mission. And this patch situates that mission within Anishinaabe. Anishinaabe are a large group of various First Nations across sort of like the Great Plains, southern Canada, northern US. And yeah, so an Anishinaabe artist, Henry Gumond, who's from Sagkeeng First Nation, drew and designed this patch for this astronaut, which situates the mission within Anishinaabe teachings about life and the relationship between Turtle Island, which is North America, and Grandmother Moon, and sort of the ways in which these clan animals, these significant animals, are or like these are very significant animals for various reasons. I think some of them are clan animals and some of them are just like deeply important. So the turtle for Turtle Island, the buffalo, like you get the idea. These are all very important and interconnected with the moon, with the earth, and with like our lives as people. So yeah, this is a very different way of thinking about and drawing a future vision. especially because where a lot of these aesthetically are inspired by, I'm hoping you can see my cursor. I'm gesturing with it just in case you can't see it, to the images on the more right hand side of the screen. But this one, um, these aesthetics are much more inflected by, um, traditional Anishinaabe forms of art, and artistic styles and symbolisms and colored schemes. It's a different way of, it's different aesthetic priorities. So again, there are different futurisms, there are different futurist aesthetics, but the mainstream one in North America tends to be this Western one, and that has these roots and inspirations from the 20th century. So futurism's aesthetic history. Let's start with Italian futurism. This was really popular from just before World War II. Like this kind of kicked off in 1909-ish, up until the end of World War II. And it's a super nationalistic, militaristic art style that's very excited about cities and planes and battles and the military, especially airplanes. Um, so think Porco Rosso and the aesthetics of those Italian fighter jets. That's, as well as the politics of the Italian military in that film. That's kind of Italian futurism. It's very fascist leaning. And here's a representative painting. This is, oh God, I can't read that. Um, this is not a good example of a citation, but it's okay because I have a sources page at the very end of the slideshow where you can go and click on the link about Italian futurism and you can actually read this artist's name and also click through more examples if you want to look at more dizzying pictures of Italian um, early 20th century art. Um, Next up, we've got Bauhaus. Bauhaus began in the interwar period in Germany. Um, Bauhaus was an art school, so school for art and architecture and functionalist design. They they came from Weimar Germany, and they were shut down by the Nazis because futurism was thought of as a threat, or in this case, modernist futurism was thought of as a threat to like German fascism's appeal to tradition and traditional values. So you'll often see this kind of like weird tension between, on the one hand, Italian fascism and Italian futurism goes hand in hand with fascism. On the other hand, in Germany, fascism was much more aesthetically drawing from history, not from this like Weimar liberal ideas about the future and modernity. So there's this fraught relationship politically between conservatism and futurism, where sometimes they align very well and sometimes they are in tension. Um, because futurism, like anything, is it's self-neutral. It's a tool that can be picked up or used by any political ideology, really. Um, so a lot of the architects and artists of Bauhaus school fled after the school was shut down. They fled the Nazis. And so the influence sort of spread around the world. You might recognize some of the artists associated with the school: Paul Klee, Vasily Kandinsky, and Mies van der Rohe, which is a name you might recognize from, he designed a lot of the buildings of downtown Chicago, but also this Eskenazi school building here at IU, that, fun fact, was originally commissioned to be a frat in the 50s and then never built. And then the school found the plans and was like, oh my God, we commissioned Mies van der Rohe. We're going to build this building. And so they built the building, but it's not a frat, it's the art school. And finally, we have brutalism. As you can see, I kind of like put these in the time of their development because they are all active at the end of World War II, but it's where Italian futurism is kind of ending, whereas brutalism is just beginning. So brutalism came out of the need for post-World War II reconstruction, combined with the influences of these earlier modernist movements and this like dual desire to memorialize the war, not romanticize it, but also honor the, the horror and the trauma of it and the dead. So you get these very imposing structures. This is a good example. Le Corbusier is a big name from brutalism. Again, very popular in the Midwest and especially at institutions. So like a lot of universities have brutalist architecture. Um, there's a case to be made that some of IU's architecture is a bit brutalist. Libraries tend to use brutalism. And then, yeah, you'll see it all over Europe, but particularly in areas that were heavily impacted by World War II. This is really significant history because all of these movements exemplify the ways in which futurist aesthetics are caught up in the political context in which the art is made, as well as how times of instability, war, and global change lead to artists, communities, and states reckoning with ideas of what it means to think about the future. If there is a future, what we hope for that future, and how that future relates to history. The In a perfect world, if we had more time, I would have a lecture just on the idea of like long term architecture and like how one element of this reckoning with instability and war and technological change is trying to figure out what to do with like the nuclear residues of World War II, right? Because World War II is the first time we have nuclear weapons built and deployed. And now we live in this nuclear age that carries with it this horrifying idea of a distant future of radioactive fallout and waste. And even if we don't use any more nuclear weapons, we still have to figure out what to do with the waste products made from manufacturing and testing them. And this gives us this entirely new problem for futurism and for architecture, which is how do we build like a graveyard for the nuclear waste that will still register tens of thousands of years into the future when presumably all of human civilization is as different from us today, if it still even exists, as we are from the first sort of like human civilizations that existed. And how do we communicate the dangers of that? I'm gonna find a way to work it in later, simply because it's interesting. But anyway, we'll talk about this in the week we talk about ecology because it's also an ecological problem. There we go. We're gonna make it relevant. Because it is very relevant, but it could also be talked about here. Anyway, consider that a teaser for future weeks. This is my first time teaching this class, and most of the time we teach on the 16-week semester schedule. So, trying to condense 16 weeks of American history and futurism into 6 weeks is a challenge. Anyway, we're along for the ride, and it's cool. So, futurism is also really relevant in our lives, right? Personally, politically, spiritually, all of these things are futuristic, right? Politics, we think about who we want to vote for based on projections of what a future under their power might look like. Personally, we have dreams and aspirations. Spiritually, we have prophecies, we have afterlives, we have prayers, and whether or not those prayers will be answered, and if not, why not? Politically, we've got revolutions, and then all of these are inflected by advanced technologies. Even spirituality. I mean, think about the existence of evangelical megachurches, which are so powerful because they can spread their message through advanced technology. Yeah, futurism is kind of a thing that we deal with in all angles of our lives.